Welcome to the Memetune program, Series 2, Episode 5. Coming up in today's program. In Patching Today, I attempt to tame the world's wildest modular. It's Club Krumar in Synthesizer Club. I move some planets around in Video Lab. And in Switched On Cybersynths, I only go and tame randomness. But first, it's the turn of a 90s icon in Little Black Boxes. of the fundamental goals of cybersynthesis is finding the balance between pure randomness and chaos on the one hand, and pattern and harmony on the other. We can look to nature to see this balancing act taking place all around us. It makes up the universe that we experience as we travel through life. From a compositional point of view, in particular for the type of music I am covering in the current series, it's this taming and controlling of random elements that is at the heart of cybersynthesis. I've already looked at the creation of naturally chaotic patches in other episodes, so today I want to concentrate on a couple of modular systems and their built-in random generators, both of which have controls that can set the amount of randomness they produce. The first is the EMS VCS3 and its accompanying rack module, the Random Voltage Generator, made in the 1970s. This device connects to the main unit with a proprietary connector and is then available on the VCS3 pin matrix, a very convenient arrangement. It outputs 2 different stepped random voltages and 1 random clock, which can trigger the envelope shaper. The 2 control voltages share this trigger to step them. The interesting part is that the amount of randomness can be set in both the output CVs and the gates. This is what it sounds like in a patch. The type of randomness this unit outputs has a voltage range across the full spectrum, meaning that at each step the CV output could fall anywhere across the whole voltage range. This is called rectangular or uniform distribution. The next device I'll demonstrate takes a slightly different approach because it limits the ranges of its randomness with something called the Gaussian distribution. In the theoretical realm, there exists something called the mean. This is the average of any given series of amounts. However, in the real world, things don't possess the properties of theoretical averages. Let's look at a random example. We know that humans have a certain range of IQ levels. Knowing the average IQ of a particular group does not help you predict the actual IQ of any given individual. If you take the scalings for everyone in a certain group, you could find the range of IQs people possess. If you then plot the results out on a graph, you would find a pattern emerge, and the pattern will have a bell-shaped curve to it of some kind. This shape is called a Gaussian curve and is the result of having a majority of levels fall in the centre and outliers gradually tapering off to each side. So it's useful to use Gaussian weighting in cybersynthesis as it gives the most natural feel to the distribution of events compared to other types of distribution. Don Buchler designed a very useful module for his 200 series back in the 1970s, as random elements were always an important part of his ecosystem. It was called the source of uncertainty and also features weighted probability functions. But today I want to look at a new module which directly focuses on the ideas I've been outlining. Here is a recent module built for the Buchler 200 system which uses the Gaussian principle as the core of its processing. It's similar to the EMS unit we saw earlier, but has a lot more features and outputs, 6 in total. The Gaussian bell curve can be freely adjusted from no randomness through the Gaussian curves to uniform distribution. It also has the addition of timing and pitch quantizers to further limit the randomness. Here is an example. In the next and final episode of Switched On Cybersynths, I'll be looking more at the art of quantizing and how to put together all the ideas we have looked at in this series. In 1964, two musical instruments appeared, which were to change the music world forever. One was developed on the east coast of America by Dr. Robert Moog, who used the idea of regulated voltages to control the various parameters of sound-producing units, which were assembled into a unified system, which he called the Moog Modular. At exactly the same time, over on the west coast in Berkeley, California, another electronics genius called Don Buchla gave his name to an equally sophisticated system that he had developed using the same idea. This was the Buchla 100 electronic modular system. Although these two machines share the same idea of using electronic voltages to control their functions, they use very different approaches in the way they achieve their sound synthesis, particularly from a user's point of view. The first Moog Modular leans primarily towards being a keyboard instrument, whereby sounds are played in regular musical ways, like a monophonic organ, but one where the musical notes can be freely created and manipulated at the composer's will. Later on in 1968, Moog introduced its 960 sequencer. There are a huge array of options available, and a very wide range of sounds can be created, but you get the feeling that it was all designed with normal 12-tone music composition and performance in mind. The Buchla, on the other hand, takes the polar opposite approach. There is no piano keyboard, just a series of pressure-sensitive touch plates, and the two sequencers were included in the original system design. However, the VCOs are very hard to keep in tune, making regular melodic playing quite difficult. What Don Buchla wanted to create was a truly new instrument that was free of any association with previous music-making devices. He saw the opportunity to create something genuinely new and futuristical. And the sounds that his system encouraged you to make were always going to be experimental and forward-looking in nature. It must have been quite something to behold in the mid-1960s, a brand new technology and way of making music suddenly being available to open-minded musicians and sound designers. The system I have here is made up of 3 cabinets and 2 touch plates. The left-hand cabinets are all vintage Buchla modules from the 1960s. The right-hand cabinet is a more recent clone of the original designs. There are many modules that Don designed which were unique to his system at the time and not found in the Moog system. These include the sequencers, dual ring modulators, the touch plates, the stereo locator, and the clocked random voltages module. These things all add to the non-melodic nature of the system and take it into a distinctly otherworldly direction. However, in this episode of Patching Today, I'm going to attempt to create a melodic sequence, much like I have done in the other episodes, as a way of demonstrating the similarities as well as some of the unique features of the first Buchla system. But it must be noted that the 100 series is not best suited to this kind of patch, Where it really comes to life is in its ability to make wild and exotic experimental patches, more akin to those which I explore in my switched on cybersynthesis episodes. But now, I'll try a more tamed down, melodic approach in patching today. First, the main stereo outputs will come out of the Model 190 spring reverbs, such an important part of the early Buchla sound. Then I'll take two VCOs and send them to a mixer. These oscillators can morph smoothly between a saw wave and a sine wave. I'll also send a white noise source into the third channel of the mixer. The mono output will go into the 191 sharp cutoff filter. This is an extremely rare vintage module and is also an important part of the 100 series sound. I'll use it in low pass mode, but it can also do high pass and band pass as well. Its output will be split and go into each of the reverbs. Now I'll take the CV out of the main 16-step sequence, in this case a cloned 146. To get the VCOs in tune, I'll need to use two independent CV processors, as the VCOs have no frequency or scaling controls of their own, one of the many quirks of the 100 series. But this is what the Model 156 processor is for, and why you need quite a few of them in a system. In this patch, I'll be transposing the main sequence every so often with a second sequencer, a vintage Model 123 8-step unit. So I can send this into the other input on each CV processor and blend the CVs to get them in tune and working how I want them. The outputs from the CV processors go to the CV inputs of the two VCOs. Next, I'll take the main clock source and send it to step the 16-step sequencer. And I'll take output gate 16 to step through the second sequencer, so that it will transpose the pitches at a much slower rate. What will happen is that I'll use the number of increments control on this second sequencer as an interactive way of changing the melodic pattern as it goes along, which you will see later. I'll use the main clock again to trigger two envelopes, one for the filter and one for the VCO timbre. This is a very special late version of the 158 sine saw oscillator, and it has a CV input for the balance from saw wave to sine wave. Again, I'll use a CV processor to mix the envelope with other things, so I can add interesting modulations to the VCO's waveform and also the filter. The other processor will go to the filter CV input, which will be a blend of the second envelope and row 2 of the 16-step sequence. The last part of the patch will use a random voltage that is triggered from the main clock. I'll use the 165 module, which is like a sample and hold that outputs a random CV on each pulse trigger it receives. Actually, let's swap this so it goes to the filter instead of the waveform CV, which will now be controlled by row 2 of the sequencer. And that's today's patch. short film I made, Proof of Hypertravel, is decidedly lo-fi and basic, but virtually every shot is what's called an SFX shot, meaning that it relies on some kind of special effects in its makeup, because to create the alien world and the interiors, I had to construct the scenes using chroma key techniques. Today, I want to look at the hypertravel scene itself as a way of showing you some more of the elements that went into making the film. Here's the original scene. first part shows the lichened samples after they've been digitized on the protagonist's special hypercomputer. I used Blender to make a spinning 3D render of them. And then transferred this onto my Video Lab system, recording it off for a first pass. I then layered this up with shots of planets and myself floating through space, made using the various video mixers and some feedback. Then I used the Ultimate Chroma Key unit to blend these elements together, creating a composite shot, which also added to the overall look of the scene. This is something I liked so much, I decided to put all the scenes in the film through the same process, essentially using the Video Lab as the grading tool for the film, which I'll discuss in the next episode. Well, that's it for the Memetune programme, Series 2, Episode 5. Bye for now.